Hello, this is Lee from Revelwood Labs, and today we're going to demonstrate 4 new features in DataMaestro. The 4 new features are multi-select, which provides the ability to define more than one source element at a time, subsets, which allow you to use your existing subsets to define your source elements, console to console, which allows you to define one consolidated element as your source and a different consolidated element as your target, and attributes, which allows you to define your target elements based on attributes of your source elements. The first new feature associated with DataMaestro is the ability to do multi-select. So I've opened up a task. I have created a brand new one. I've selected a cube, and now I'm going to select one of my elements. In this case, I'm just going to pick the first dimension, version. I'm going to change my source. And one of the things that you're going to notice is when we select source, we now have a box that gives us the opportunity to determine which elements do we want in the source. In the old world, this box didn't exist. In the new version, we now have the ability to select a version, but we also have the ability to select multiple versions. So instead of copying a budget over, maybe I want to copy budget and actual. And by selecting multiple elements, it's going to give me the ability to do 2 things. Thing number 1 is have multiple pieces as part of my source or as part of my target. But thing number 2 is once I click on OK, I now have a notification that tells me multi-select. It tells me the specific elements. At any point in time, I can click on it and go back into what I've selected, and I can change them, or I can close it out to bring me back to where I left off. The overall concept, giving me the ability to select multiple sources in a single task, eliminates the need for me to create multiple tasks and eliminates the need for me to create a package if I know I'm going to be doing repetitive copies. The next new feature associated with DataMaestro is the ability to use subsets as part of your selector. So within this, I'm going to choose the time dimension. I'm going to click on the element to pick my source. And what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that there are different types that are allowed. By default, it's set to elements, which allows me to look at specific elements, and it allows me to pick 1 or more elements as part of my source. What we now have the opportunity to do is we have the opportunity to use subset. And subset can be used in one of 2 ways. I can either use subset as my end all be all, or I can use subset as my starting point. Based on the fact that you most likely have subsets built into your system. Maybe you have something for all base level elements. Maybe you have something for a certain year. This gives us the opportunity to click on type, click on the subset box, and select a specific subset. Within this dimension, we have a series of subsets associated with time. I'm going to pick the subset called 2023 months. I say OK, and now that subset called 2023 months is going to be my source. What I also have the ability to do is, instead of choosing the subset within the elements, I could have chosen the subset, and that doesn't make 2023 months my end all be all. It makes 2023 months my starting point, where I can then select specific elements. I could say maybe I just want January, February, March, maybe I just want January, etc. And this gives me the opportunity to either use the subset as what I want to copy, or the subset as what I want to start with to determine my copy. The third new feature associated with DataMaestro is the ability to copy from one consolidated element to another. DataMaestro gives the opportunity to create a source by picking a consolidated element. I can select 2022. When I select 2022, by default, it picks all of the quarters. By default, it picks all of the months. When I shrink it back up again, I can turn it off. I can turn it back on again. Selecting a consolidated element picks all of the base level or the leaf level elements below it. The new feature allows me to define a different consolidated element as part of my target. Previously, when I pick a consolidated element, it would copy the results into the same exact element. But in this particular case, maybe I want to copy the data from 2022 into 2023. When I go into my target, I could pick an element, and I could select a different consolidated element. So I'm going to pick 2023. And because I'm picking a different consolidated element, the system is smart enough to say, hey, I need to make sure that everything is legitimate. And that's where this button called Preview Mapping appears. What Preview Mapping will do is it will help correlate the consolidated elements from the source with the consolidated elements from the target. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the dimension structure and make sure that there's some form of mapping. Now, we purposely chose time in this particular example because most people have time as the exact same roll-up. Years go into quarters, quarters go into months. It's real easy to correlate. And when I click on preview mapping, I'll be able to see what is my source element, what's the related target element. The system will look at the dimensional structure based on the roll-ups, and it will try to do the mapping for you. And one of two things will happen. Either it'll succeed or it won't. If it succeeds, you're going to see on the screen, here's my source, here's my target. It's going to give me the mapping table for everything, and it's going to tell me everything is okay. It's going to explain how it works. But what I also have the opportunity to do is, if it turns out that it doesn't work, I have the opportunity to see what's going on. So I'm purposely going to pick something that doesn't work well. I'm going to copy from 2022. I'm going to paste only into 3/4 of 2023. In this particular case, I've got 12 source elements, 9 target elements. It's not going to work. When I go into preview mapping, two things will happen. Thing number one is I'll still get the definition of what is being mapped. And as I look at it, I'm going to see, hey, 9 of these look great, but 3 of these don't. But more importantly, the system is going to do error checking. The system is going to prevent me from erroneously copying something that isn't a one-to-one mapping. We've got some red font, we've got some explanation. It tells me that I have 12 source elements, 9 targets, and it's going to give me information about the fact that it's not a one-to-one. The fourth new feature of DataMaestro is the ability to define my target elements based on attributes of the source element. So I'm going to pick a source element of the time dimension. I'm going to pick the year. I'm going to pick 2022. And as you know, by picking a consolidated element, selects all the leaf levels below it. When it's time for me to pick my target, we saw as one of the previous features that I have the opportunity to pick a specific element, and I can use that as my target. But if I don't want to define a specific element, what I have the opportunity to do is I can select type, I can select attribute, and what the system will do is it will look at attributes of the dimension and give me the opportunity to use that as part of my target. Many of our customers have an attribute, especially in the time dimension, that states, I'm going to define the next month. I'm going to just define the same month next year, same month previous year. And this way, if I'm doing some kind of a paste or maybe a pre-population of my budget, I may want to be able to correlate the month this year with the same month next year. I'm going to select an attribute. In this particular case, we've created one called map to. When I choose map to, just like we saw before with the console to console, we have the ability to do a preview mapping. And what preview mapping will do in this case is it will grab all of my source elements and it will grab the attribute associated with my target. And this is where DataMaestro will again do some user checks. It'll do the same user checks that we saw in one of the other features with console to console, but the other piece that DataMaestro will do is it will ensure that the values associated with your target attribute are legitimate elements. If they're not legitimate elements, we'll get some kind of a message and we won't be able to do the paste. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions about the new features or any other DataMaestro related topics, then please contact us at info@revelwood.com or visit our website at revelwood.com.